Making music should be fun, right?
When I first started this project by asking the question, the real spirit of this project was just highlighting the joy of making music. I thought that if I could create these limitations and do something that was radically unserious, that then I could stoke the fire of the joy of just making music.
A little kid doesn't stop drawing because they're not Picasso. They do it because it's fun to do. Even making shit is fun when it's something that you love. And in most cases, the more that you do anything, the better at it you get. The first 3 tracks that I highlighted in this project all had a purpose. They all had something that I was trying to prove. I was trying to show that there were different types of songs that you could make with this limited budget, and that there were different ways to use the tools that were at my disposal. So, making music should be fun, right? On this last track, I had nothing to prove. This was just sheer fun. I felt like I knew what my options were, and I had the opportunity to really just play around with it and enjoy the process. And that's what I did. This, in my opinion, is one of the weirdest songs that I've made for this project, and it's one that I am incredibly proud of. I think that because of the experimentation that I'd done for the rest of this project, I was able to just jump into the playpen and enjoy the process, and most importantly, do so with nothing to prove. Here is how I made the 4th track on this under $1,000 project by, well, just goofing around. Alright, with this track I did so much just playing around in my DAW and messing around with different things, and I'm going to try to go through it as quickly as possible to kind of show you everything that went in to making this really, really interesting and really, really fun song. Now the first thing that I did was I wrote this guitar part and kind of worked on the lyrics alongside of it, and that guitar part looks like this. Later in this song, I did another chord structure, and I actually ended up muting one of my strings with a piece of tape like this because I just wanted to play without having to worry about muting it with my finger. So I ended up, using a poor man's solution here, and it worked out really, really well. So then I was able to kind of get this really, really cool sound for the bridge. I used the same recording technique that I have used throughout this entire project for recording acoustic. That is one mic around the 12th fret and then the direct input, and I EQ those slightly differently. And in the final recording, those sound like this. So pretty minimal effects processing on that. I've just got something that's really solid and lays a really good foundation for this track. Before I even went to recording vocals and kind of finalizing what that melody looked like, what I wanted to do was add some kind of like atmospheric beauty to this. So I ended up using Alchemy to create this really pretty keys sound. Within Alchemy, which is a stock plugin on Logic, what I am using is the Antarctic Sun preset with the velocity filter performance selection, whatever you want to call it, and that sounds like this. It's really pretty, I really like it, and it sounds really good with the guitars. If I unmute those and you can hear them together, you get this really, really pretty relationship. All right, next, and this is the thing that kind of makes this song crazy to me. I thought that it would be cool to make this really peaceful, pretty acoustic keys part and then contrast it with like the most just distorted, disgusting, busy drums and see what that sounded like. So this wasn't something that I knew I wanted to do. It was something that I played around with. So I created this drum loop in Logic, and I wanted something that was busy, almost like, I mean, I've been listening to him a lot lately, almost like Linkin Park-esque, like something that was loopable and quick and would kind of have an interesting relationship with these other instruments in the song. So without any of the processing that I'm doing on those, what I'm using is just one of Logic's stock kits. This is the Speakeasy kit, but I have changed some stuff in terms of tuning and dampening and like which snare or cymbal I'm using. But this is what it sounds like with no post-processing. And that basically just loops. There's some different things that I changed throughout the song afterwards, but that is the foundation of what I was doing here. But I didn't really want it to sound like that. I didn't want this like clean, boring drum loop. So the first thing that I did is I added a crap ton of distortion to it. This is just the Logic Distortion 1 plugin, and you can kind of see the settings here. Then I added a channel EQ that is just cutting some no good frequencies and boosting others, and I'll show you what this third one's for later. And then lastly, I do have this sent to a sub-bass channel that is just enhancing that kind of below the kick low end. So with all that on, it sounds like this. And that was just filthy, and I ended up being really, really stoked about the way that it sounded with everything else, and it just like adds this drive to the song that's really, really cool. The next thing that I added to this track was this really, really heavy bass. I thought with a drum loop like that that's going almost constantly throughout this song, that there were two ways that I could really add dynamics, and one of those is the introduction and the removal of low end, and the other one is changing the drum beat. So those are kind of two things that I play with a lot in this track to add dynamics that were really just fun for me. I wanted to add like an absolutely insane heavy bass part to this song. So I ended up once again using Alchemy, which literally this is just like such a fun place to play around. If you can't afford a bunch of stock instruments and you have just Logic Pro, there's so much that you can do in Alchemy. It's really, really crazy. So this is the dark heavy bass instrument, and I'm using the dark and snappy preset on it. And then there's two other things that I'm doing here. The first one is that I am also sending this to a sub bass channel that just adds, once again, that kind of that feeling, which I had to test this so many times in my car because since I'm using headphones for a lot of the mixing on this project just due to budget, I can't really tell where that sub bass is, so I would just jump into my car and play it in my car, which is a 1999 Honda CR-V, which does not have the best subs either, but sometimes testing things in shitty speakers is the best way to figure out if it sounds good. The other place that I'm sending this, which was kind of an interesting decision, is I'm sending it to this grit pedal that's also Logic stock. I believe it is their version of a Rat. And I'm mixing just a little bit of this distortion in, and here's the reason why. I was struggling with this bass to get it to be heard when played through smaller speakers like a phone or just your computer speakers, but then it was overwhelming if I turned it up enough to do that. It was overwhelming in a place like my car because that had subs in it. So what I did is I was able to kind of balance that sub well and add this distortion, which just highlights some of those frequencies that we hear and don't feel in the bass, so that it was heard nicely in every speaker and felt as well in the right speakers. So all together, this bass sounds like this. And alone, that might be kind of interesting, but here's what it sounds like when we include the keys part, the drums, and the acoustics. This is where that bass drop comes in. Now, once again, I talked about playing with bass as my focus of dynamics in this track. So the bass is really only in what you would call the chorus, which is pretty much an instrumental chorus for this song. And everywhere else I pull it out, except for some random spots where I bring it in to give emphasis, which is really cool as a tool that says, like, when there's no low end there, you notice it dramatically. So it adds so much thickness to the track when it's there. I do have this very, very mild bass that goes during the second verse, and that one sounds like this. And that kind of runs under what is like the verse 2 of this song. So those are like the foundations of this track that I really honestly was just playing around with instruments and with this guitar line and just having fun with. So I liked the idea for this track of using lyrics that were more of implying the creation of a scene than directly telling you what to think. I've been listening to a lot of Circa Survive lately, and that's kind of that Anthony Green thing that he does of just like painting this picture for you and allowing you to kind of connect the dots. And even when they don't make sense, it's like you get the integrity of the piece. So I focused on like creating these images and sounds with the words that I put in the song, and came up with this really cool, I think almost like fantasy-esque narrative about like just feeling lost in your life, and hopefully it translates. But more so, I liked the way that the melody and the sounds of these words went along with the rest of the project. So this is the raw lead vocal. I've added a few things to it. There's a little bit of pitch correction. I've put this tube EQ. There's a channel EQ on here, which is just cutting some stuff I don't like, and a compressor. And then I'm sending this into a saturation channel and my VFX. So that sounds like this. Vinyl scratch, end of the melody. White mist creeps over mountain's edge. I then went ahead and added a double to it, which you probably barely notice, and that's the idea. It's really just supposed to add thickness. And then there is this low dub, because it's just me singing an octave down, because I felt like there was kind of that low end missing, especially with all the low end that's competing in this song. And then I have two harmonies that accent in different places, and the cool thing about both of these is that their dry signal is barely in there. It's mostly sent into the effects channel. The idea is like I wanted it to sound like an echo from a distance, like there is a voice far away that's singing these harmonies. Instead of you like knowing it's right next to you, you're just hearing the echo of it. And I really loved that effect. And if you hate it, I don't care, because I think it sounds really sick. So that sounds like this. And I use all of those in different ways throughout this song, and I'm pretty stoked by how the processing came along. I will definitely, as I go in the polishing phase, I think re-record the lead vocal for this, just because I think there's a lot of places that I could have done it cleaner. So this is what all of that together sounds at the beginning of this track. Final scratch, end of the melody. White mist creeps over mountain's edge. Steady now, sings the wind. Lost in what direction should it go? I just love the contrast that's in that. I think it's really cool. I was just grinning the first time that I heard that through, because I just was a little bit shocked by
the almost accidental nature that I made it, but I also I'm stoked about it. I think it sounds really, really cool. There's a few other things that I wanted to let you know about that I did in this track to kind of strengthen it. One of these is that during the second chorus, I actually there's two more drums that are going through it. One is an exact duplicate of the first drum loop, but it has none of the processing on it. So it's got a basic high cut, but other than that, it's just doubling it to kind of add more punchiness to those drums. And then there is a second drum loop, and this one is also acoustic, but it's run as well into the sub bass and into a separate drum room. And this is kind of to give you that like clean drums put on top of this like really dirty loop. So while the double you can't really tell is there, it just adds punchiness. This one has its own character, and it's just like kick and cymbals, and then the drum loop actually drops out during the bridge of this song, and that drum loop takes over, where it's just this like kick, cymbal, snare pattern in a really like open bridge. And during that same bridge, I also dropped the effects from the vocals, so you lose all of this reverb and you get something that's really dry, and that lets you add some contrast to this track. The next thing that I wanted to show you is in the outro of this song, which is I've put both verses on top of one another. So what's really cool is that they each sort of line up, and I have a vocal singing each one, and it's panned hard left and right, and then there is a like reverbed up the wazoo scream vocal that is accenting the parts of each of these different verses that I want you to hear. And the scream sounds freaking sick. This is how that sounds, if you want to know. I love that. It's very high-end heavy. I have 2 doubles of that, and then I'm processing them as a single input so that you can't really tell that there's 2 there. It just adds some saturation. What I've got is this EQ where I cut most of the low end out, and then this Chroma Glow is Logic's like saturation thing using the distort byte setting, and then that's run into a reverb as well, and you get this, I don't know, it just sounds dope. I love the way it sounds, especially when you pair it with the stereo. These are like verse 1 and verse 2 vox that are both being played together. Those all sound like this together. And with everything together, it just sounds absolutely epic. Also in this kind of like final verses going together, I have this thing happening on that dirty drum loop, and that's what this other EQ is being used for. I have this automated so that it is gradually letting a ton more high end back into this drum part, which just like adds some filth to the drums. And then I also have automated the distortion to go up in drive, so the drums are essentially just getting dirty and dirtier towards the end of this song. Lastly, I added a bunch of these little sound bites. So the first one is this little vinyl scratch sound that starts off the song. Because the first lyric of the song is vinyl scratch, I thought that it was fitting to put that in the track as the kind of intro to this song. It like accompanies the lyrics, and you're hearing it. You have these 2 things that are going together. This track starts off like this. And then over the course of the length of that sample, it goes from full left panning to center, so it kind of draws you into the song. Then I have a bunch of these little nuggets, as I've called them and labeled them in this project, that are just emphasizing different lyrics that are sung throughout the song. The first one is I at one point sing "Scorched by the Sun," and then this sound plays. I thought that sort of sounds like being scorched by the sun. That is the Alchemy Dark Eruption with the gated preset, and then I'm running that into distortion as well as EQ and some reverb. The other one that I have is this choir, because I say steady now sings the wind, and I wanted to know what would it sound like if the wind was singing. So I am using this girls choir ah. This is the ah. And that's just run into EQ with reverb. It's a pretty like a decent reverb mix. And I'm boosting a ton of the high end to make it sound like angelic. So that sounds like this. And that is panned almost all the way to the right. And then I have some accents that are happening during the second chorus. And we alternate between them. The first one is this kind of crazy like machiney sound. And that accompanies cymbal hits, which it just sounds sick when they're paired together. And then the other one is this synth line that accompanies the same cymbal hits, but alternating. And those are panned to different ears, which has a really cool effect when you're listening to it. And then leading into the bridge, we have this kind of riser. And both of those things just add a lot of life to this song. That really is the gist of it, and this was super fun. I have gone through like 5 revisions of this already to kind of get to one that I'm really, really happy with. There is a lot more going on than there has been in some of the other tracks on this project, but this has been really fun, and in sticking with the rules of this project, I have not used over $1,000 of gear. I mean, the only instrument that's not software that I used in this was my acoustic guitar, and then I guess my voice would count as the other one, which is using the same microphones and gear and the PreSonus audio box that we started off with in episode 1. So if you want to know all the gear that I'm allowing myself to use for this, you can find it there. Once again, the only thing that does not count for the cost is my laptop, because I think that would straight up be impossible. So that was kind of one of the stipulations I let myself have. I am, and this is, I mean, sounds surprisingly good, using Ozone 11 elements. I used the AI to do like a quick master for me, and it sounds really, really solid. I'm not one who's for that all the time. My first album is entirely mastered by this guy named Caden Boffman, who did an absolutely killer job. But if you're incredibly low budget and you're trying to just kind of produce something on your own, this is really not a bad option. And you could pay a little bit more and get like full customization. I used to use Ozone 8, which I do have like full customization within this one. I don't have the super nice version, but that's because we got this for $10 when we started this project. So it was kind of like there was just a random deal, and I thought it might be a good thing to have, and it has turned out to be a good thing to have. So that is very quickly all of the production tricks that went into the creation of this song. Hey, thank you so much for watching this video. This track was really, really fun to make. I think that for me, it was just a reminder of the joys of being creative. So I hope that in watching it, that maybe you found some inspiration to be creative yourself, or just to go to that next step of a project that you've been working on and just enjoy the process of making music. You may notice that unlike the other episodes in this series, I did not include the full song within this video. What I am asking for you here is just to take one little extra step, and that is to head to the Ragged Oak Patreon page. You do not have to pay to listen to this full track there. It is up there right now, along with a bunch of other really cool demos and stems and videos and educational material. All sorts of goodies. The reason that I'm asking for that is because I really want to actually connect with you, my audience, and I have found that competing with all of the algorithmic BS that is on social media, it makes it really, really hard for me to actually connect with those of you who legitimately value this content. So if you want to listen to the first version of this song that I showed you some bits of in today's episode, please visit patreon.com/ragged-oak. This video today pretty much concludes the demo phase of this project. I know that it has been a long process, but we are finally there. So we now have 4 complete demos. I'm probably going to be doing a little bit of like intro transition track stuff, but I don't think I'll do a video on each of those independently. I think I'll just show kind of how I made the whole process. And the plan is that there are only going to be 2 or 3 more episodes in this series, from just polishing these different songs up to showing these transitions to the release of this EP, which I will have some more information about the manner of that release coming to you soon. If you've enjoyed this video and you haven't seen the others in the series, please head to the channel, subscribe, and check out the full thing. I think that it's really cool to kind of see the through line going through all of these, and I can't wait to share with you some of the more polished final versions of these and to just complete this process. Lastly, as I've said before, if you are interested in having your music featured in any of these videos, then please send an email to management@raggedoak.com with your music, as I want to help support other independent artists. This does not have to be within the same parameters of the project that I have been working on. It can be anything that you have put out pretty much ever. Send it to me, and if I like it, I may feature it in the next video. All of that aside, I hope that this video and this series has in some way inspired you to go forward and make music, and I can't wait to show you the final stages of this project. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.